In this video, we're talking about the debate of food versus fuel. It's a great day out here at Husker Harvest Days. One of the questions that comes up quite a bit when we talk ethanol is food versus fuel. So, Robert, you have some background on this, and I'd like to get your thoughts on when you hear that statement, what you think of.
Yeah, I mean, the food versus fuel debate has been a canard, to say the least, for decades to come, really created out of the Grocery Manufacturers Association and the petroleum companies to kind of squelch the amount of ethanol that would be consumed in this country. What I think most people don't understand is when the corn enters the ethanol production process, all that we utilize to make the fuel is the starch. And as we look around this room, we have plenty of starch in this country, and we use that to make the fuel, and the rest of the ingredients to come out in various other things like CO2 that's used for everything from dry ice to carbonate our beverages. I mean, we use it every day in plentiful amounts. And then you have distiller's grain, which is feed that goes back in to replace the corn that may have been otherwise used for livestock. So really, all we're doing with the corn is making a value-added proposition for agriculture and corn farmers specifically, and adding value to each bushel that comes through the ethanol production process, and at the same time preserving, if not making the feed even better by running it through the ethanol plant.
Yeah, one of the things really, that we take as just kind of a general rule of thumb is it's 1/3 starch, 1/3 CO2, and 1/3 the protein value inside of every kernel of corn, just to give you a rough idea. And that's one of the cool things, and we'll talk about more later, is the CO2 and what's ahead for us here in this industry. But Reed, when you look at the state of Nebraska and you see, this food versus fuel argument, what's the real effect as we get just here in the state of Nebraska?
Well, I think it's helpful to educate on what kind of corn is grown and for what purpose. We talked to our Nebraska Corn Board quite a bit about the splits and the types of products that come from that industry, and it's very commonly that 1% or less of the corn actually grown in this state goes direct to human consumption. The rest of it is number 2 yellow dent field corn that would go to feeding livestock or going right into the ethanol plant. What a lot of people don't realize is over time we've also been able to grow a lot more on the same plot of land and then continually use our processors in very similar fashions. So we're really only sending about of our third of our field corn to our ethanol plants across the state as well, to again be a part of what we call the golden triangle, right? Robert hit on it really well just a minute ago. Creating that ethanol, those grains that go into that vibrant livestock industry that we have here in the state, and then of course keeping our whole kernel corn industry, exports, and different opportunities alive too.
And I think that's an important point. In the last 70 years, we've increased corn productivity on the same amount or less acres 700%. So it's not about needing more acres. It's not about mowing down trees or pushing up pasture. It's about more efficiency at the farm gate to produce more corn from less acres.
Absolutely, and our farmers continue to do it with different types of practices that are even continually more sustainable, conserving more resources, using less inputs to get that same exact value, keeping that carbon in the soil and maintaining the health of their product.
Reed, I think we could look at this from another angle too. We use corn that would otherwise go to cattle for feed. I know it comes out the back end of the plant as feed, but it's about a third of it. There's a lot of concern in the grocery store about inflation of food prices. Even if only 1% is directly consumed by humans, you've got products that are used in food like corn syrup and things like that. I mean, would it be practical to say that if ethanol went away, that the grocery store prices would have an impact or see lower prices at the store, or really what would happen if ethanol went away to our whole kind of economy? So
yeah, I think that's a great question, and ethanol has been, of course, really important in energy security and diversifying our fuels, but also in food security and ensuring that we have valuable ways to continually do more with less. Using a dried distiller's grains offers a direct access for those cows to the healthy protein and healthy fat resource. They don't have to fight through the starch to get there. So actually our livestock partners are able to do much more with that feed. It unlocks much more potential, really doing with less inputs, creating more mass that will make it into the groceries, and that inherently keeps our prices stable and is a really great market contributor. That's a great point, Brent.
if you stop the ethanol industry tomorrow, the impact it would have not just in the ethanol world, but in the entire economy as a whole. With the state of Nebraska, the agriculture gross domestic product in the state of Nebraska is 25%. And so you're taking away a significant part of that 25%. We would have excess grain produced, corn produced in the entire nation, doubling what we have today. It would drive prices down. It would create a significant recession throughout the entire country just because of what would happen if ethanol went away tomorrow.
Yeah, and I think it's important to highlight again, Nebraska drivers and people consuming gasoline in Nebraska save $325 million per year choosing ethanol blended fuels over non-ethanol blends. And Robert, you guys do a great job of keeping track of some of this economic impact as well. Is there anything you'd maybe want to add, on the fuel side or the feed side?
I mean, you look at those, how high that number is in Nebraska, and let's face it, there are states with a few more people and bodies and vehicles running around, so that impact is exponentially greater in states like California, where they are using 1.4 billion gallons of our ethanol every year in their internal combustion engines, all the while saying they're going to electric vehicles. But they know the economic impact of E85, as one example, in California is half price of gasoline. So you have calls coming to the Midwest looking for used flex fuel vehicles because they're looking at ways to use more E85. But yes, the economic impact is seen every day as clear as the pump price, right? Especially if you have other options like ethanol free, and you can compare apples to apples there. But the value proposition, whether you appreciate ethanol or not, is keeping not only liquid fuel prices down, but it's also keeping, as you mentioned, at the grocery store down.
You can download our app now. The link is below. And be sure to follow us on our socials.